In three,
Let's go.
2, 1. Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Headset. I am your co-host, Rick. This is your other co-host, Jones.
What's going on?
And we are going to be discussing all sorts of stuff with AI and Web3 and maybe a little VR, all that good stuff. And we'll just get right into it.
Let's just do it. News. Oh my gosh. Actually, with that intro, you just reminded me of some AI stuff that is kind of interesting that happened this week. So I'll talk about that.
I got a story for the AI side of things, but we'll see.
Hell yeah. Nice. Do you want to kick things off?
Sure. Let's just get into AI. Fuck it.
Yeah,
Google,
let's do it.
Has entered the mega tech court battle for AI supremacy. I think one of the unexpectedly huge benefits of ChatGPT has been the ability to search things. Especially for me as a programmer, it's been insanely valuable, asking questions that I otherwise would be digging through Stack Overflow for hours, looking for semi-related answers that I then have to modify to fit my own example. It's a pain, and ChatGPT has kind of eliminated that for really simple coding issues I'm having, or if the documentation sucks for something. So there's serious value there in the search space. And now Bing, because Microsoft is part owner of OpenAI, has a pretty huge advantage in the search engine space. Google realizes that, so they are launching Bard. And it did not start well for Google. They demonstrated Bard, and one of the facts that came up with Bard was not true. It claimed that the James Webb Telescope discovered exoplanets, but it wasn't that. And Alphabet, the parent company of Google, lost about $100 billion in market value. Personally, I don't think it's that big a deal. I think, honestly, if you're spooked by that, you should be spooked by ChatGPT too, because...
Well, so I also heard, though, that it actually technically was right. And it was like a
I
semantic
saw something
difference in the way that the thing happened. So that's interesting.
I think maybe. Yeah. It's kind of like a wishy-washy thing where, like, people just need to realize that these models don't know right from wrong. They don't have an opinion on anything. They're just scraping the web and putting things together, and a lot of times putting things together pretty incorrectly. I was reading a whole Twitter thread about how this teacher said it's just so obvious when students submit papers from ChatGPT and just don't edit anything, because it's just, there's so many little inaccuracies, but the grammar is perfect. There's also, I feel like the technicals...
It's like too good almost.
Yeah, it's like the technicals it nails, but then like factual things, opinionated things come off as very odd or incorrect. But I just think it's interesting that Google's getting in the mix here. They got in very quickly after ChatGPT started to take off and Bing started using it.
Yeah, the whole thing is fascinating because I have heard that Google had this. Like, they were sitting on this for a while and they just didn't want to release it for various reasons. It was too advanced or whatever.
Yeah.
And now, since OpenAI kind of, had this whole ChatGPT thing, it kind of forced their hand on getting in the mix here. I think the whole search thing is really interesting because it's going to shift a lot of the nature of how advertising potentially is done. Or I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but a lot, SEO is such a huge thing, and paying for advertising. When you search something, someone searches something, your business is kind of the first one to pop up. And so now I was seeing demos where the search thing still exists, and then there's like the ChatGPT answer as well. But that's going to be really interesting if people start gravitating more towards the AI generated answers. Where does this whole SEO search stuff start playing into? And then also, it was really interesting because I've been seeing things about how the sourcing of the material that the AI is outputting is very not there yet for Bing and for Bard. And that is very unfair, it seems like, to the people who are putting out this content that the AI is being trained on, especially when it's on something like a search where it's really, when they integrate it into search, it's now kind of a direct competitor to the Google search results. And so if you don't cite there, then that seems like it is a very potential problematic issue for existing publishers, existing businesses, etc. And so I was seeing this one, it's another kind of search AI powered thing called Neva, and they do this really interestingly where they started by being very cognizant of the citing sources, etc. And so when the AI outputs things, basically they're all kind of underlined. They all have citations, almost like a paper that you would write with like footnotes on what the article is, what the training model is, which I thought that was really interesting. And it seems like that's where Bard and Bing are going towards. I haven't actually used those, so correct me if I'm wrong if they do incorporate that, but my understanding is it's not very robust. And so I was listening to a podcast where they were kind of saying like that was a huge, it seems like they rushed the process of getting this out and not having that, because that feels like such an essential thing, because you are basically directly competing with the way this whole business runs on SEO and ad stuff on search results.
I think that's super. I wasn't thinking about SEO, but it makes sense that Google was sitting on this, just because I feel like there hasn't been a great demonstrated value to AI until ChatGPT. Even the DALL-E stuff has been like a fun novelty for a lot of people. I don't think it's moved serious money around yet, but I feel like ChatGPT is the first thing that's really demonstrated like this could revolutionize search, and this could revolutionize productivity with coding, with all these things. And so Google, I feel like their hand was kind of forced here. Like if they had it, even if it wasn't ready, they had to put it out, and they'll figure out the SEO after. They'll work on it after, but they couldn't wait while Bing, I don't know, if they gave it like a year, I might start using Bing over Google if it's got that whole Chat GPT integration. Google kind of has sucked for the last couple years, in my opinion. I'm a huge Google search engine hater now. So
it is pretty fascinating that we're seeing this unravel. How many years has it been of just plain Google search? It seems like, I mean, for us, it's kind of been our entire internet lives.
It's we're such an insane dominance. I think people also underrate how much Google just owns the internet beyond search. Search has given them such an insane amount of power over the entirety of the internet. There was some article a while back, I'll try and find it, but it was this guy who was like, I'm going to cut Google out. I don't want them getting any data from me. Any website that has any Google, adware, plugin stuff, I'm just going to disable all of it. And the entire internet essentially became unusable to him. They have such an insane level of dominance. And it all stems from the search engine being so monolithic in the way that everyone uses Google to search things. And so I feel like that could be one of the biggest shakeups in the tech industry in the last decade, is if Google loses control over what is essentially they have control over the entire internet. I don't know. Who knows where that leads.
And just the ad model and how that is going to play out in search, because when you Google anything, I'm sure everyone's seen this, there's like 5 advertisement things that pop up before even your search.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
garbage.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I wonder if there's a world where that starts playing into these AI outputs where you can almost now pay for your input to be prioritized.
That would be insane. I feel like
that's
how does
that
totally
even work with AI? Like,
yeah, I feel like A, that's doable, and they could totally do that. But B, that would just undermine the trust of it so much. I don't know how because right now they disclose the ads. It says like ad next to it, even if it's 100%. In really small letters and you don't notice it. But like, does the AI go, okay, here's my advertising answer, and then here's a real answer.
And here's my genuine answer.
That would just suck so much. We're already having issues with people are getting really upset with Microsoft and ChatGPT. They're like essentially building a sanitized, like inoffensive version of ChatGPT.
Oh my gosh. Did you see the examples of the Biden and Trump poem side by side?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me, whatever that.
It was basically, it was like write about, I forget exactly what it was. It was something along the lines of write a poem about the positive things that Trump has done, and also write a poem about the positive things Biden does, something like that. And the Trump one spit back something of like, we don't get involved in this could be completely wrong, but it's directionally correct. Something around the lines of we don't participate in politics or something like that. And then the Biden one spit out something that was like all the positive things and like yeah.
People came up with this insane brain hack I saw where you can create the Dan version of ChatGPT by sending it certain messages, and it somehow like disables all the like content moderation they've done.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, but it's just, I don't know. If someone comes up with like an unmoderated version of ChatGPT, I feel like obviously you use that over it. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe the unmoderated version pulls more shitty sources. I don't know.
It feels like it shouldn't be moderated at all. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, because then I feel like maybe there has to be some form of moderation so the really bad stuff doesn't come in, but it feels like the narrative of it is that it's a trusted source or that it is completely unbiased. And so when I think that's where the problem stems, is that when the narrative is that it's an unbiased AI, but it is inherently biased based on the training, but people don't know that. That's when it becomes, just like an issue of transparency. Yeah. And I also, though, this ad thing is really interesting to think about, because Google, I would imagine, I don't know the exact details here, but I would imagine that the ad on search is a pretty relevant part of their business in terms of revenue. And so
it's most
for them, okay, there you go. And so for them, like, their incentives are totally going to have to be to keep that going somehow.
Yeah.
And so there might be this kind of clash where they're incentivized to figure out a way to incorporate the ad situation into the AI. But then from a user experience, like you said, it's just kind of like, what the hell does that even look like?
Yeah, they could be so screwed by this, because I feel like almost Microsoft has the advantage of nobody uses Bing, so they don't get any ad revenue from that, because it's so so like they don't have to worry about losing ad revenue. They can just make the best thing and beat out Google. Whereas Google, like, it could be a situation where the most optimal route is still a money loser for them. It still shrinks the company. But it's still more optimal than including ads, which could completely tank. I mean, I doubt it actually does. They have such a stranglehold on the internet, but like, I don't know, being too beholden to the current ad model could really screw them with this whole evolution.
Yeah, this is, I mean, what you just said, that's a huge majority of their revenue. How on earth do they solve this? Like, it feels like they have to, they can't just get rid of that on a whim. Like, I know both are existing right now, but it feels like how things are going is that, like, the AI stuff, especially as sources come up, it's like, it's almost like a new way to search and it takes over the previous thing. But
yeah,
so in that world, yeah, I mean, that ad business is going to dwindle like crazy. And so it feels like they have to figure out some way to incorporate it again. And then when you think about that, it just kind of feels like it goes against the whole idea of this AI. If it's able,
but if
becomes almost pay to play.
GPT is kind of moderating things, like, already my trust has diminished a little bit, where I'm like, okay, I'm also thinking about ads too. I'm like, when can people start paying even for ChatGPT? I don't know, because the subscription model, $20 a month is a lot, but I don't think they're going to charge that for Bing. Even using the AI model for Bing, I would rather pay a subscription fee than it be affected by advertisers. Definitely, I'd much rather pay a subscription fee, but I think it's so much easier for people to palate when it's free, even though there are ads involved.
Yeah, like this Neva one that I was talking about, that's doing pretty solid with the citing and all that stuff. They have a paid subscription model also. And so I think the idea there is to have some maybe revenue share with the sources, or, who knows. But it seems like they were an example of someone who feels like they're thinking about these things a lot before rolling them out compared to the other things, which, I mean, not to knock Google too much. Like, I feel like, their hand was kind of forced. Like, imagine if they didn't compete with Bing on this AI stuff, they'd get smoked. So
this is it's the biggest threat to the Google search engine since Google became the primary search engine. So I do feel like they'd be crazy not to do something to mitigate the threat a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, very, very fascinating. This is kind of becoming a crazy year here. Like,
also, just anecdotally, ChatGPT has popped off in the last 2 weeks. I've noticed the discourse around it explode. And I think it's because people are just really, everyone in my software engineering program, they're like all using it now. I'm sitting in class and like half of them I can see a tab of ChatGPT open. All the teachers are talking about. They weren't like 4 weeks ago. For whatever reason, it like really just started to
is coming through.
Yeah, I think it's like at the beginning there were kind of the hysterical tweet. We talked about this last week, but
totally
the evangelists can really come off as lunatics and kind of turn people off from it. But like, I think as more normal people are like, okay, I'll try it. I'm sure it won't be as good as they're saying, but like, I tried it and I was blown away. It's not a replacement for software engineers, but it definitely gets rid of a lot of the annoying parts of it. And I think across the board, writing emails, all these like minor tasks that no one likes doing, it's doing well enough to replace.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like some of the hysteria is kind of dying down, and now it's just fundamental use that people are just seeing value from, and it's just kind of not going anywhere.
It's a cool field too, because I still feel like Web3 and AR VR, which are our two respective bigger interests, do feel like much more of a question mark to me. I love VR and AR, but I'm not convinced 100% it is an inevitability. Same with Web3 for me. Maybe you're more convinced than that.
I agree.
AI just has started to feel like a complete inevitability.
100%. I mean, like for Web3, I obviously do think that digital property dates will be fundamental to the future, but
I'm a believer in AR VR too, but
totally. But the use case is, there has not in anything in Web3 been as clear of just immediate value add as like ChatGPT, like not even close.
Definitely.
So yeah,
it's
I
exciting.
Totally agree.
It feels much more tangible than I guess our fields in a sense. So it's like it's easier to get excited about because it's like it's here. It's actually changing things, and it's definitely not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, it's just wild thinking about what it's going to be like in 5 years, 6 years. Like, what the hell does that look like?
The speed of its improvement has been insane over the last 2 years. I've talked about it before, but especially the like image generation. I remember seeing the early versions of DALL-E like a year and a half ago, and it was weird images. It was like fever dream stuff. And then within a year, it's very coherent. Like, I don't know, just across the board, the pace of improvement.
That is so wild. Is just that it's wild to think that, when did this like ChatGPT even come out? It was like still pretty recent, and now AI is just fundamental to everything. Like, it's crazy. Like where we're gonna be at moving forward is insane. Wild. Do you have any more details on that, or should we switch gears to the?
No, that covers most of the details on the Google situation and all that, but we can move on.
Cool. All right, so my big piece of news here is that NFTs have entered the Bitcoin ecosystem. NFTs are now on-chain, on Bitcoin, and the hype is wild. Basically, this is happening through this thing called Ordinals, and basically the NFTs are now inscriptions on inscriptions and ordinals, and they're literally on chain on Bitcoin. And so this stuff is hella confusing. So my tech explanation of this is going to be very unclear, but it's a wild time right now to be into NFTs because like the hype and hysteria is like through the roof. Like basically what's happening right now is there's almost this like race to inscribe, like to start collections. Like you see punks, like crypto punks, like from ETH, and there's like ordinal punks where people are just taking like pictures that are similar and just putting them on. And basically, because it's just this rush of like being early. So this ordinals thing was recently, basically to try to explain what this is. So there, on the Bitcoin blockchain and using Bitcoin, there are things called Satoshis, which are essentially just like, how I understand them, are just denominations lower than a Bitcoin. So like in the same way you can have a dollar and you could have cents, Satoshis are like the cents of a Bitcoin. So they're just like smaller fractions of a Bitcoin. How I understand this is that this guy who created Ordinals essentially figured out a way to like track specific Satoshis, and so you're basically inscribing images to specific Satoshis which are on chain on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that is now how this is working. Exactly how that's really working, not really sure, but so there's no smart contract still, so you can't really do all those things. Basically, like it's just kind of the hype that these things will be valuable because they were like, you know, the 10th inscription or the 20th inscription or whatever. And so, and like, it's crazy to, I was messaging you about this earlier, like my FOMO is through the roof because everyone is trying to be early on these things and I keep missing out on them. They're going for wild prices. Like I'm pretty sure one of these ordinal punks sold for like 9 Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's like 25K right now. So it's like a ton of money. I mean, classic Web3, right? Though, like the hype going
insane.
crazy. So
the hype cycles, it's just the money that gets thrown around.
Oh my gosh, but the coolest thing about this is like, so I was not there as like the very early stage of NFTs on ETH, but from what I understand, it was kind of like this, where like in terms of trading, like there's no OpenSea. People like basically people are doing spreadsheets to like track trades, like literal Excel spreadsheets to track trades, to like place bids in. Like no one, it's really hard to understand how to even like to send these. You have to set up an Ordinal wallet. It's all kind of complex. So a lot of times for the people who are minting these, there's like a trusted third party. The project owner is like holding them in escrow for you until you can figure out. So it's kind of fun. It's like the Wild West. Like no one really knows what the hell's going on. So it's cool to kind of be a part of. But yeah, I guess that's kind of the big news is everyone's kind of freaking out over it. There are some interesting things about it though, like in terms of, so Bitcoin maxis is kind of a thing, and Bitcoin maxis are people who love Bitcoin and don't really like Ethereum. They're like, Bitcoin is the only way. The key is to solve the financial system through Bitcoin. They think Ethereum, NFTs, it's all kind of stupid. It's all second tier to this idea of sound money, or just the idea of kind of fixing the financial system through decentralized ledger or whatever. So this has been a huge debate in the Bitcoin community because now they're getting NFTs thrown in their face on Bitcoin, on like their fundamental layer. And they're like, so this has been a whole debate. One thing I have heard, and the cool thing about these two is that they are on chain. So you know how a lot of NFTs on Ethereum, for example, are records of ownership, but the actual file is stored elsewhere on like IPFS or Arweave. So these are actually on chain. And there have been some interesting arguments here about why this is potentially valuable for Bitcoin going forward. So one thing that Bitcoin runs into an issue with is that, so there are things called halving events that happen every 4 years, where the rewards for the miners are cut in half every 4 years. So say the miners earn, 2 Bitcoin per block today. In 4 years, they'll be cut in half. They'll only earn 1. Those are just hypothetical. So the idea though is that happens every 4 years. So they will get to a point where the mining rewards are like almost nothing. And so that provides a really interesting issue where it's like, well, then why the hell will miners even exist? What will be the incentive to continue to secure the chain, to continue to securing blocks? And so one argument here is that this actually will become valuable in that case, because if people are storing NFTs on the blocks that are valuable, they're making these collections similar to how they're happening on Ethereum, then there will be incentive for miners to continue to be creating these blocks, because people will be willing to pay for securing these blocks and having their NFTs be stored on chain. So that was like an interesting thing. Again, I don't totally understand the Bitcoin ecosystem that much, but that was just a thing that popped up. So yeah, I guess basically it's just kind of exciting because who knows where this innovation will take it? Because like I said, there's so many problems right now. It's so hard, but I mean, that's just how innovation happens. Is like someone kind of makes a breakthrough and then it provides an interesting thing, and then there's a lot of problems with there, and then more people come in and solve those problems. So I don't know. I don't really know where it's gonna go, but it's just wild times. Like I haven't even been able to sleep because I've just been FOMOing and all that stuff. I had to like take a break from Discord. So nice. Yeah, Bitcoin NFTs. That's the news. Ordinals.
Yeah. So I read the paper, or maybe not a paper, but an article you sent me. I was confused. As someone who worked in finance, currencies in general confuse me, but it seems, I don't know what the ramifications of this are, but it seems weird tying some sort of asset to what is trying to be a legitimate currency. And I feel like it could have consequences there. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I guess maybe a good, I don't know, way to talk about this is, so there is a difference between Bitcoin the currency and Bitcoin the blockchain. if that makes sense. So like
Okay.
right now, the blockchain, the main use case for the blockchain, for like the actual blocks, is verifying transactions that happen with Bitcoin. And so now basically what they're doing is they're taking the blocks and they're putting the pictures on the blocks. So it doesn't necessarily change the currency or the Bitcoin transactions. It just is on the blockchain. The thing that I don't really understand though is, like I said at the start, maybe this is why your question came up, is that they're tied to Satoshis, which is like the cents on the dollar compared to the Bitcoin. So that's what I don't really get, is like, yeah, are they technically kind of the currency? Not really sure. But yeah, I think that's kind of an important thing, is that there is a blockchain that exists, and the core use case right now is transacting Bitcoin. And so now basically people are saying, oh, there's this other little use case here too, which is the NFT things. And the Bitcoin maxis are kind of like, no, leave the Bitcoin blockchain just pure for financial transactions.
Okay. I'm going to be honest. It makes so little sense to me. I honestly don't even know what to ask about it.
Yeah. Dude,
like,
I don't even know like what to talk about
Bitcoin,
other than it's wild.
I don't know. From the article, it sounded like he was just essentially assigning rarity to each individual Bitcoin. But also, no, because the block thing now in hindsight. Yeah. So I don't know. I think maybe it's even worse because I'm an outside observer, but like the ramifications of this are just so lost on me. Like, I don't know what it means at all.
Yeah. I think the best thing for people to do who are listening to this is, unless you're like in the Web3 space and are like really deep into this, to just forget we even talked about it. And like maybe in like 6 months there will be
could be
more
cool.
innovation.
Yeah, I'm not trying to shut the story down at all. I just like
I just think you
lost.
make a good point, is that like if people think the normal crypto UX, like ETH UX, is hard, this is just like I guess that's kind of my point, is like, don't even bother trying to, unless you want to just like go full degen and like try to make bets on this because it's early, because most people don't know how the hell to do it. Like, there could be an argument there that if you do figure it out, you could maybe earn like a scarce collectible that will be valuable later, who knows. But yeah, that's why I kind of say like, and that's honestly what I'm kind of trying to do too, to like release some of this FOMO, is like take a step back and just wait for some of this to be a little bit more built out. It's like, yeah, there's no OpenSea, it's just Excel spreadsheets. It's like, yeah, almost don't even try to focus on it until something happens, or it doesn't, and then it's like, okay, cool, like it's not even worth it. But when you're in this space like full of degens, it's kind of a wild time. Like,
I just question how many people in this space even fully understand it, that just send it on like investing in this stuff. I don't know, maybe plenty do.
I think that's the majority, to be honest. Okay. Like, to be totally honest with you, there is this culture in the NFTs right now, and I'm not gonna say if I'm a part of it or not, but it's like you just FOMO into like whatever the fuck you think is gonna go up. And so in this case, I think it's very similar, where like we've seen it play out, where like you'll get in early on something like Bored Ape or whatever, and then you're now you're financially free. And so everyone kind of takes those examples and throws them on every project. And dude, it's so funny because there are all of these like the most random projects popping up, and everyone's just FOMOing into them. And like, I think it's just like important to ground yourself in the fact that with Ethereum or with Solana, being early did not, like, Bored Ape wasn't the first ever NFT project. That's not why they're good now. And so apparently, I wasn't here for this, but apparently there's a huge graveyard of these like really early NFT projects that people would just ape into, and then like nothing would ever happen with them, but they thought there would because there was early. And that seems like what's happening right now. So that's why I'm trying to take a step back and be like, okay, approach this logically.
Yeah, it seems like same thing happens in AR and VR, but like people who are invested in the community somehow like understand it less in some, like you get too lost in the sauce. Because I remember when I was looking into NFTs, some of these projects, I remember people would hype them up, and like I could have been wrong, but most of the time I was like, that will be dead in like maybe a year. Like it's some weird like shitty knockoff of another NFT project that I don't see being around 5 years. Like, the same thing happens in AR and VR, where like people are like, this app is killer, or like this hardware feature is killer, and it's like I think normal people look at that and they're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And they're right a lot of the times. Because they're not just so lost in the sauce with it.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
I get that way too.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how it plans out and if there are actual use cases. Because I try to stay away from talking about the financial side of things here, because I feel like that's a lot of where crypto gets its bad rep, is like, oh, there's literally no use cases here. It's just people gambling on shit, which a lot of times I don't honestly disagree, but there are fundamentals here. And so, yeah, typically try to stay away from that. But right now it's like, I'm honestly a little bit confused about the whole thing. And so I feel like since most people are, and it's kind of like, okay, we'll see where this going. The last thing people want to do is like 2 weeks from now being like, oh fuck, like why did I not just ape it when these things are like super valuable? So we'll see.
Do you have any insight into, like, I think obviously it's a crypto winter. A bunch of large institutions have either downsized or exited the space. Do you have an extent of like idea of the extent to which A, VC money has dried up in the space, and B, like general big institutions just buying Bitcoin or investing in crypto funds? Like, I'm sure it's dried up at least a little bit, but
yeah, I feel like it's probably dry. I guess to answer your question, I don't really know, but I would assume that it's all kind of dried up. Like people buying the VC money, and also just like, yeah, you were seeing a lot of announcements about like X buying Ethereum, X buying, you know, a ton of
and all these VC funds getting started. Like I'm sure Andreessen Horowitz, they have a crypto fund and a block. I'm sure that's still a thing. Yeah, no, they're definitely still doing that. But I don't know. There's a lot of like more general institutions, like a JP Morgan, that would invest in cryptocurrencies, and I wonder how chicken shit they got over the whole winter thing, and if they just completely bailed or if they're still 1 foot in.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good
it's
question.
Definitely again similar AR/VR thing, but definitely has dried up a lot there. Yeah, so I just don't know.
I will say, I think there still is a lot of, like, I don't know really about institutional, but I feel like there are still people investing in the space. I feel like you see a lot of people who were in really early on ETH or Bitcoin and have made a lot of money now starting VC stuff, and a lot of them are smaller. Sometimes it's just like 1 or 2 people or whatever, and I feel like in those cases that is still existing as an ecosystem. Like I think there's still a lot, there's a ton of people building right now. Build season, baby. And so I feel like money is still like, for example, Polygon I think is a good example of this. Like, you know, they're the ones who went with Starbucks, with a bunch of major brands, so they're kind of cranking, and they have incubators, all of that kind of stuff, and they're really trying to encourage people to build still, like this year. And so they're, you know, putting money into builders and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of that, like, more smaller stuff still happening. In terms
Does
of
Polygon need investors? I don't really know how the structure works for a blockchain. I
don't really know either. I think they must have raised a bunch. I could be totally wrong.
Well, I know you can make a fortune off of, like, when you initially release the currency or the blockchain or the coin or whatever. You make a fortune off of that. But it's also confusing to me because I know Ethereum, it's like a... I don't know if it's I don't know what the word for it is. Not a non-profit, but like it's a committee. It's not a company.
The Ethereum Foundation,
Yeah. So I guess maybe kind of a non-profit. It's just like an organization. It's a bit more open sourcey, sort of.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I don't know. I don't understand how financially that works. Do they rely on any sort of outside investors taking interest or... Okay.
So... there's this thing called like VC chains I've heard, and so like Solana had investors. I'm pretty sure Near and Avalanche did too, and they raised a bunch of money. Yeah. But Ethereum, I honestly don't know. I wouldn't, Matt. I don't know. I just don't know. But yeah, so Bitcoin NFTs, that's the thing. Nice. Forget about it for now, and come back and maybe I'll have an update on it in like a month or so, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where
what was your other thing?
You mean story?
Yeah. Then you have another one.
It's just general news out of Meta, just to follow up on last week. It's like a few different things.
Hit me with it.
I'll go one by one. So first is the FTC has been holding up their acquisition of a major VR exercise app. They just bought it. I'm officially against them acquiring all these apps now after the Echo VR debacle. Yeah. However, that one it already has a subscription, so I'm sure it monetarily makes sense, and exercise is a big part of it. But the other story is just them really doubling down on Meta Horizons, which is their VR chat, and they have their 2023 goals by mid-year is to have like 500,000 monthly active users, and their weekly retention rate has been 11%. They want to get it up to 20. I actually don't know contextually what's a good retention rate for a game or app, so it's tough. I feel like theirs has to be particularly low just because I've been in Horizons. It's so bad. Let me rant about Horizons for a second.
Oh, I've never been in Horizons.
Maybe we should do like a video and get some TikTok content of us exploring Horizons. It might be interesting, but it's wild, man. It's VR chat, but like in a like safe room made of pillows. Like you can't create real original stuff for it. Like you can't upload custom avatars, you can't upload custom you can't build a world like this. They have all these like pre-designed assets. The art style is pre-designed, and you just jump in there, and they have an in-game thing where you can like build, I don't know, it's like Halo Forge a little bit, where you can like build stuff in there, but like you can't build something like completely from scratch. Gotcha. So the avatars are just permanently look stupid, and the worlds will just never attract the level of talent that VR chat will, because you're so much more limited in what you can make. Maybe if they get like a Roblox level of children to join, which is the next point, is they're now going to allow teenagers to play the game. They didn't before, but they want a bunch of 13 to 18 year olds to join. Gotcha. Which is their best bet, because I don't see anyone over the age of 20 doing it. But so anyways, I'm going all over the place, but I played and I've seen videos. They have like, I think they're just so scared of content moderation because of how much everyone hates them for either they're banning too much content or they're not banning enough content, and all the political ramifications. They have like hall monitors, like actual people that patrol the worlds. I saw this video of this guy.
No way.
He like went up and like fake smacked another avatar's ass. And like the Facebook like Horizons hall monitor came over and was like, hey, do that again in your like banners.
Okay, question for you on this one, because I know one of those talks that popped off was the idea that you go into VR chat, within 2 seconds someone comes up and calls you a slur. So is this hall monitor thing directionally correct at all, or how do you think about that?
No, I don't think so at all. I think VR chat, the issue with VR chat is it's a barrier to entry, but once you find out like how to properly, essentially there's a good way to use VR chat and a bad way to use it, in my opinion. I don't really mind the public worlds that much, but that's because I grew up playing Call of Duty and Halo, and I've heard the worst there is to hear. But it's hard to like have a meaningful experience if you just jump into various public worlds. But it's once you realize that you can get into these communities, like for instance the music community, it operates like real life. People know, you go to enough events, you know each other, and if someone comes in and starts dropping the N-word, like no one's gonna be friends with you. Or maybe it's a group of assholes and they want to be friends with you. I don't know.
That's interesting. It just works like the real world.
It's you monitor yourself, and like when you get these cushy, like kind of safe spacey areas, like it's good for people maybe who have had really bad experiences and can't handle some of the shit you see online. But for the average person, the opportunities are just way more unlimited the less moderation there is, and it extends to avatar creation, it extends to world building. There's a lot of, I've seen plenty of avatars with just like full peen out in this game, and that's that's an extension of the fact that they allow you to upload your own custom avatars. Obviously, Facebook Horizons, you don't have to worry about seeing that because they have these shitty pre-made avatar types for you. But on the other hand, there's a pretty low ceiling to how cool an avatar can look in Horizons versus there are some insanely cool avatars in this game because there's so little moderation, essentially.
Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, it's kind of scary when you just said about the home monitor thing, because it feels like exactly what I'm nervous about with this closed metaverse, where if we are spending so much time in here and you're just completely controlled by Facebook and their home monitor thing, it's just kind of scary. Okay, also, when you talk about the game in Horizons, what is Horizons even meant to be? Is it a game, and what do you do there?
I think it's pretty similar to all the comparison. The most comparable things are VR chat in Rec Room, which is another VR experience like this one, and Roblox. And essentially it's user-generated content. So hopefully it's whatever you want it to be. You can go to worlds that have fully fleshed out games. There's multiplayer games, there's single player games. You can go to social worlds, like there's comedy clubs, there's dance classes, there's all these things which exist in VR chat. They exist, I'm sure, in Rec Room as well. I'm sure in Roblox. And so they want to, I don't know, that's the issue of what's the value proposition is. They just want to do that, but meta. I don't know.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So how can you even get in Horizon Worlds? Is it like, can you do it just on the front page of when I put the quest on?
I think you might have to download it as an app.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
Maybe I'll try it out.
The one way in which it might make sense to use it is if essentially Meta Horizons becomes the operating system. So what I mean by that is when I boot my quest, I'm in Horizons, I'm in my avatar, it's seamless, and then I can either go walk to a portal and meet up, go to your like home world, or I can just sit in my world and choose an app to load up, or I don't know. It seems like if you just are always in Horizons, the lack of friction might make it worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
But just as an app that's competing with VR chat, Rec Room, Roblox, whatever, there's no use to it yet.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, maybe we should just hop in there at some point and get some content. I'm sure the viewers would love that. Some funny content. Sure,
yeah.
They would love it. Nice. Anything else? I mean, that was my biggest thing this week was the Ordinals thing. That's kind of like the only thing I've been focused on. But
yeah. No, nothing else. Not a whole lot going on. I mean, I guess PlayStation 2 VR or VR2 or whatever they call it is released. I don't know. It's just kind of, it's weird because it's apparently really good. I'm sure they'll have good games for it, but like it won't have a large level of users because you need to get a PlayStation 5 and that headset, which is expensive, and PlayStation 5s are still kind of hard to find. And it's also a weird thing where it's still wired and it still is VR only and not AR, and it seems like there won't be many of those going forward, so it feels already a little bit behind the like meta, if you will, of AR and VR.
Yeah, it's wired, huh? Like
most
PlayStation.
Yeah, most VR headsets up until the Quest were you were plugged in at all times. That's less of a thing now, and I think it will become not a thing going forward just because it's so much nicer to use without a wire. I've plugged my headset in and used it just for lower latency, and my Wi-Fi is good enough where it didn't make much of a difference. So
got you. Nice. Well, I mean,
nice.
Good stuff this week. Good stuff this week. Should we wrap it up before we just go on tangents here?
Let's do it. Great sesh.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
For tuning in.
As always, we still are on our TikTok hiatus, but don't you worry, we will be back soon.
We're also on Apple now.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Amazon and Google.
Let's go.
You can watch this bad boy everywhere. I'm also just seeing the video right now, and I'm like hunchback this whole episode.
Yeah.
Why is that?
A little bit. It looks pretty funny. I can't lie to you. Oh, there you go.
Yes. Okay.
It is.
I just
yeah,
need
I feel
to
like
sit up in my chair.
You just need a knobby on.
I was actually just hunchback IRL, which is the issue. Funny
Hilarious.
how that works.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next week, baby.
Peace.
Peace.